Tēnā koutou katoa. Tuatahi ake e tautoko ane ngā mihi ko horaina ki ringi ki a koutou I tēnei ata, I tō tātou pōwhiri. Koutou ko hara mai tawhiti, ngā iwi take, ngā kanohi, whakakanohitanga o ngā iwi take o te ao, e mihi ana ki a koutou katoa. Tai atu ana ki ngā kanohi no tata, e mihi ana ki a koutou ko whaiwā ki te kofkawātea mai a koutou I tēnei rangi e rua, kia manaaki te karanga o te Wānanga o Raukawa, o tira o ngā iwi e toru o te rohe nei, kia huitahi mai ki konei ki te Wānanga o Raukawa. Nā reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, Meihana, for your introduction, and a really big warm welcome to Te Wānanga o Raukawa, to all of you. We consider ourselves very fortunate to be hosting this conference in these couple of days and appreciate that you've responded positively to our invitation. The idea of hang on, I'm just going to get myself sorted out with this technology up here. Here we go. It's entirely appropriate that you are coming to us at this time of the year, and for those of you from the Northern Hemisphere, it is actually autumn, or fall, some of you. You will know that, you'll be feeling it right now, but it's quite appropriate for you to come here at this time of the year. One of our proverbs tells us, koanga tangata tahi, ngahuru puta noa, that this is the time of the year where traditionally, typically in the springtime, very few people arrive, but in autumn the masses arrive because that's when harvest time is. And so you shouldn't suffer from hunger pains while you're here, and if you do, we haven't looked after you well enough. But the idea of our small town and its Wānanga being the host venue for an international gathering such as this here today seemed remote until a few years ago when a delegation supported by the J.R. Mackenzie Trust made the journey to New York City to attend an IFIP conference there. We took the opportunity to extend an invitation to IFIP delegates to make the South Pacific the venue for a future conference and to allow us to return the hospitality extended to us at that time. What a great thrill to hear that our invitation had been accepted, and here you are today. You'll have noticed that your venue and your hosts are a far cry from the Big Apple, but be assured that we're grateful for the long distances that have been travelled to be here and excited by the opportunities that the conference presents. Traditionally speaking, it is a good time for you to be here. The themes of the conference thoroughly resonate with those matters high on the agenda for Māori: climate change, fresh clean water, food sovereignty, education, traditional knowledge and Indigenous development are some of the key commonalities that give meaning to the descriptor of Indigenous communities as people of the land. So welcome to the people of this land, in particular to the 3 tribes that established this organisation: Te Aotearoa, Ngāti Raukawa and Ngāti Rangatira. The Te Wānanga o Raukawa was established to provide a place for us, of us, by us, about us, that would safeguard our traditional knowledge and develop us as Māori. Te Wānanga o Raukawa is a big part of the Otaki story, which I want to share with you today. The key reason as to why the invitation to come to Otaki was extended is that there has been something of a miraculous re-imaging occur in this town over the last 40 years. The change has come about as the result of a plan led by the Māori community. The impacts of that plan have probably crept up on the community, initially fairly gradually, such that it is true to say that the non-Māori community and many of Māori residents of this town did not see the change coming and were probably oblivious to it for most of the time. They know it's here now, though. So I'd like to tell you the story of Otaki and what this town was and what it is now, with some thought about what it could be in the future. And whereas the story of Indigenous languages and cultures is often one of struggle and loss, the Otaki story is about a community that reawakened belief in itself and organised itself for better things. It's a good story. This community is something of an enigma. It has reversed the downward trajectory that language use was on, and quite dramatically so. The impact has been far-reaching and gone well beyond just language revitalisation to people revitalisation. This includes the emergence of a Māori tertiary education provider where you are right now, called Te Wānanga o Raukawa. This region is the home of 3 tribes, Te Aotearoa, Ngāti Raukawa and Ngāti Toa Rangatira, who migrated here in the 1820s and have engaged in a number of joint projects since. Their relationship has given rise to them being known as the Art Confederation. At the time they settled here, we can be sure of saying this about them in the 1820s. They were truly people of the land, with their culture and language fully intact. They were truly Māori. The following decades, with rapidly increasing arrivals of settlers, saw that change. By the beginning of the 20th century, Māori were a minority people, the language in decline, and issues of physical survival a reality. We all know about the impact of colonisation, diminishment of land, language resources, cultural knowledge and protocols, religion, economic, social and political structures, all on the decline, and a people in crisis. That decline was rapid and comprehensive in this region. Colonisation successfully convinced many Māori of the superiority of the settlers, the lack of value or relevance of Māori language and culture, and importantly, convinced Māori not to believe in ourselves. Otaki was not immune to its effects. Māori in this region and in Otaki showed all the signs of oppression, language and culture loss, poor health and education statistics, low socioeconomic status, and no sign of reversing a long-running downward trend. It's often difficult to put your finger on or find a specific piece of data that gives an accurate measure of how bad is. However, for our 3 tribes, this was confirmed by way of a survey done in 1975, which revealed that there was no one under the age of 30 who could speak our language. The magnitude of the demise was then indisputable. We were hurtling towards language loss with 2 generations, children and their parents, registering no language capacity. Close on the heel of language loss would be the disappearance of the Māori mind that could think, process and respond from a Māori worldview, meaning that potentially all we may be left with that was Māori was our DNA. And to add insult to injury, the real possibility that our 3 tribes may take the unenviable title of being the first Māori tribes to be language dead. Then, in 1975, a tribal development plan was launched. The plan focused on the 3 tribes. It was a 25-year plan called Generation 2000, Whakatupu Rangarua Mano. It set out to span a generation, deemed to be 25 years, to land at the beginning of the new millennium in much better shape than was the 1975 reality. It aimed to produce a new look generation of Māori, one very much stronger than the previous. The plan's architect, Professor Whatarangi Winiata, an accountant and academic who had spent considerable time studying in North America, had come home and been distressed to see the state of his people. With the support of the 3 tribes, the plan got underway. It was underpinned by 4 principles. Firstly, our people are our wealth. Secondly, the marae, and many of you will be familiar with our institution, the marae, our traditional gathering places, is our principal, PAL, home. The language is a treasure, and we must control our own affairs, self-determination. Giving effect to the strategies of the plan relied on goodwill and voluntary effort of many from within the 3 tribes and others who also contributed generously. Over time and from small beginnings, traction started to be gained. One of the most significant achievements was the establishment of our own tribal centre for higher learning a Māori university based here in Otaki, where you are right now, Te Wānanga o Raukawa, the first modern day Wānanga to offer degree level study. With 2 inaugural enrollees, no funding, no buildings, no resources and no formal recognition, observers could be forgiven for feeling sceptical about its future prospects. Probably the fact that Te Wānanga o Raukawa made it into the Guinness Book of Records as the smallest university in the world did not engender a great deal of optimism either. But here we are today, offering a range of undergraduate and postgraduate nationally accredited degrees to more than 3,500 students each year who come from all over the country. And of course, we're able to host this conference in a facility this town could not have dreamed about only a generation ago. The Tribal Development Plan, you need to tell me if I'm going on too long, Mehana, focused on developing our people. Soon after Te Wānanga o Raukawa got underway, Māori medium childhood centres, schools, secondary schools all began to emerge. All of these models were initiated and led by Māori, many of them graduates of Te Wānanga o Raukawa. So throughout the 80s and 90s, Māori education initiatives took quite an extraordinary hold on the Otaki township. Gradually, many Māori parents came to see that Māori medium models were producing Māori-speaking children and that the children were not disadvantaged. In fact, they were bilingual, bicultural, with no confusion about identity. Further, these schools were producing much better education results for Māori children than were the state schools. The demand for Māori medium schools grew quickly, as did positive energy and affirmation for the Māori language. The tide started to turn with regard to the status and profile of our language and culture. Fundamental to rebuilding language and cultural competency was recognising and affirming the potential of our own people, that is, looking to ourselves for the answers and building capacity within. From a dire situation in 1975 with no one under 30 who could speak Māori, the 2013 National Census provides data that shows that 50% of the Māori population in Otaki can now speak our language. To put this in context, the national figure in 2013 for all Māori was 21% and on a downward trajectory. Otaki is on the incline. The bulk of Māori speakers is now in the under 30s, the very group that recorded zilch in 1975. So other than the statistics, what are the other visible signs that progress has been made? There have been other self-correcting mechanisms. Otaki is now a very different town. There's a proliferation of Māori education models that has created a healthy competition. There are debates now had by young parents about the merits of the various education models Māori education models on offer. Parents have the dilemma of trying to decide which Māori medium early childhood model to go to, which Māori medium school to send their children to. A quandary not yet experienced in much larger communities or indeed in our larger cities. There's been a positive economic impact. Māori education is by far the biggest employer and single contributor to the local economy and provides, one you might argue, the economic base for the Otaki township. There's visible public affirmation. Māori signage can be seen on shop frontages inside some shops and around the town. Dramatic wider community growth benefiting all. In 2012, Te Wānanga o Raukawa invested $10 million into this building, an institute for Māori lifestyle advancement that, while it focuses on promoting good health for Māori, is enjoyed by the whole community. There's been an intergenerational language impact. There's now a generation of adults living in Otaki, some of whom are parents themselves now, whose compulsory education, primary and secondary schooling, has all been through the medium of the Māori language. Their children, a second generation being raised with Māori as their first language, are coming through the Māori early childhood and primary schools. So they have grown up in a community where Māori language and cultural behaviour is the norm. They are distinctly different from those educated through the state system. There's been a return of the Māori language to the public domain. Conversations in the Māori language can be heard in and around the township daily. Unlike other communities in New Zealand, it attracts no negativity from bystanders, shopkeepers and so on. Speaking Māori, particularly in public, has been renormalised. Sharing the language with non-Māori. Māori language greetings are widely known and accepted to the extent that non-Māori people not only respond to a Māori greeting in Māori, it is not unusual for them to initiate an exchange with a Māori greeting. And Māori words and phrases are inserted into everyday English utterances on a regular basis. Terms like manaakitanga for hospitality and generosity, kotahitanga for unity are commonly heard words. Māori ceremony and custom are a common occurrence. Many organisations seek the inclusion of Māori ceremony for occasions such as openings of buildings, welcoming staff and so on. And of course the significant increase in speakers of the language registering that half of Māori in Otaki can speak the language in 2013 on an upward trajectory, which means we can confidently say to Māori people in Otaki now, if you're Māori and you can't speak Māori, you're in the minority. That was something we couldn't have imagined doing a generation ago. Great outcome. As more languages heard and cultural practices are revived, acceptance grows, tensions reduce, and relationships improve. Interestingly, the level of paranoia and resistance has reduced correspondingly with the increase in the use and visibility of language and culture not seen as a threat. Otaki has developed into something of a Māori language and culture sanctuary in comparison to the town it was in 1975. So other factors that have assisted in our transformation, well, one thing is that we're a bit of a one iwi town, a one tribe town here, unlike other communities where you've got several tribes holding tangata whenua or people of the land status in the town. This town is Ngāti Raukawa tribal territory, and so there's only one boss, if you get what I mean. Our Māori Centre for Higher Learning Te Wānanga has done its job over the years in developing the capacity of our people and educating our people, made a massive contribution in that way. And also, I think the fact that Te Wānanga pitches its contribution, its offerings at degree and postgraduate, undergraduate and postgraduate degree level rather than at lower certificate level means that the development, the people development has been marked. And in getting there, we have to convince our people, some of them, that they have got what it takes, because there's been a very good, very successful experience in state schools to convince most of our people that they haven't got what it takes. Our place says you can do whatever you like, come to us and we'll help you get there. But there's absolutely no way we'll accept can't do or haven't got the goods. We've found that children are the most effective marketers of the language. The quality and success of Māori medium and early childhood models was seen as the distinctiveness of the first wave of children who emerged fluent in the Māori language, competent exponents of Māori cultural practices, thoroughly at ease with who they were as Māori, and without the baggage of those denied their language and culture from their birth. This group became the envy of others, from their peers to their parents and grandparents. Interest in these models grew quickly, with more and more families opting to follow the first wave. This increase in demand gave rise to a second Māori medium school. We're only a 6,000 people town and we have 2 Māori medium schools here. The product of all this effort is not monolingualism, it's bilingualism. It's an additive model. And although educated in the Māori language, our children are bilingual, such is the influence of the environment, that even though they're only allowed to speak Māori when they are at school, they are merging bilingually. What was clear was that in order for children to be fluent, the education space had to be a Māori language domain that would serve to overcompensate for the powerful influence of nearly everything else in the children's lives. A solid infrastructure emerged around the plan. Support on a tribal level was important, absolutely essential, and that was achieved. Crown agencies undertaking compliance assessments have met with tribal scrutiny when entering Māori spaces here. This is not to suggest that our tribal structures balk accountability. The concern is more around the relevance of measures and competency of measurers that come in from the Crown. In principle, though, compliances required by the Crown are never as meaningful or important as are the accountabilities to our own tribes. Satisfying the Crown means nothing if the tribe is not happy. The location where we're geographically situated in Otaki here is actually in the midpoint of the confederation of the three tribes, and I think that that's helped with what we've achieved as well. It's also true that good vibrations attract positivity, and it appears that Otaki has become a place that gives off good vibes for Māori. Māori students that come to Wānanga Raukawa often comment on feeling positive vibes in Otaki. Not only the wānanga, but the community is supportive, and Māori is being affirmed in many ways. And we've been able to define and claim spaces as language hotspots. Otaki is seen as something of a Māori language domain, and I might just add that this year we've got moved to have a part of Te Wānanga o Raukawa campus a Māori-only speaking zone. But really it's all about the children, and the effect of the strong focus on children has been a positive. They acquire and absorb the language without the pain or effort that those of us that learn language as adults have. And it's usually them that tip the scale of any scepticism when they are observed as behaving as children do, but with all the competencies that those of us of a previous generation could only dream about. There's no emotional baggage. I've got to be close to my time. 5, okay. Important too, and part of the theme of the conference is the relinking of our people with their natural environment. Within the reawakening that has occurred is a reconnection with the physical environment, something seriously compromised during the years the tribes were in decline. This relationship with one's physical environment is a distinctive element common to Indigenous peoples globally, recognised, as I said before, as people of the land. The highlighting of environmental reference points is a very powerful connector for Māori, a natural thing for Māori to identify and introduce themselves by way of both genealogical and geographical reference points. Must also say that the work that's been done here and the efforts have been Māori designed, built and controlled, and that is absolutely essential if we're to make progress. We are actually, as arrogant as to think in Otaki that we know best what's best for us. And it's so important that we have full control of anything that is done to working towards advancing our development as a people. It's important to have a plan, and coming from a teaching background, that's so essential to the start of every day. But the Whakatupuranga Ruamano, or Generation 2000 plan, launched in 1975, was definitely the catalyst to the work that has been done, and very much more was achieved actually than that plan envisaged, which is a testimony to how good the plan was. It was embraced by senior elders within the tribes who was captured by the thinking, the vision, the heart and the tenacity of the architect. We do have work-ons, we're not there. Remember, we're only halfway there. We've got work-ons. We need, the work-ons. We need our people to keep the momentum going. We need language to be spoken at home, and our own people to make that commitment so that the language isn't just carried by the schools. And we need a passion around that. We need that passion to continue. The current crop of speakers of the language who grew up speaking the language from that last generation, and there are one or two sitting in the room here, Dipeka, Nōpera and others, need to keep the momentum going. That is, it can't be a one-generation wonder, all of this work. They need that. We're relying on them to keep the next generation, to go through into the next generation and keep this going. The answer definitely is to continue to focus on the children because of the effortlessness with which they can acquire language. And we must not reinstate monolingualism. There's a message there also to take care of our environment. We need to challenge the apathy, encourage the connects and reconnects with our land. It's our birthright. We need to strive for accuracy and quality in our language, and we're in a period now where there's a lot of focus on that. Fluency has been achieved very, very well. It's now time to take our language to another level of complexity and quality. Education is power, and the Māori education models from early childhood to tertiary or Wānanga must be maintained and strengthened, and we must resist Crown surveillance and intrusion. And we must encourage our young people to be discerning and strategic when choosing life partners. I've offered to do it for my own children. I haven't. They're all in their 20s now, 5 of them. They think I'm joking and I'm not, but they're still not listening to me. But I think that we've put a lot of effort into the last generation to raise a Māori-speaking generation of children and young adults, and now they need to be really careful about not letting the love bug get too carried away and choosing very strategically so that this momentum carries on to the next generation. Nearly there. So what have we achieved? We've achieved our model. It's not the model, it's our model, and it's been very much about ourselves here and our people. We've been able to turn a pioneer spirit and personal sacrifice and gritty determination and belief in dreams into reality. We've been able to absorb criticism. We have exercised calculated defiance, thorough selflessness at times, and a focus on reinstating that which was let go by our ancestors for us, and now we're getting it back. The level of momentum that has been achieved in a largely redneck community, which Otaki was, is quite extraordinary. It was no time for the faint-hearted, but we're pleased that we've got through that period. So the last 40 years has seen Otaki develop into something of a Māori language and culture safe harbour. If we go back over the last sort of 100 years, we would say that in 1915 all of our people could speak Māori. By 1975 we knew that nobody under the age of 30 in Otaki could speak Māori. By 2013 we've clawed back 50%. And just recently, we are told by the Minister of Māori Development that Otaki is to be named the first bilingual town in New Zealand. External affirmation. And so, finally, just to say that language has the most influence in shaping the mind. Language and thought are indivisibly interwoven. The ability to not only communicate in one's native tongue, but to think within that cultural framework is a basic human right that, when reclaimed, is extraordinarily empowering. It's through focusing on competency in the language that the path is set for our people to once again see the world through Māori eyes. Kia ora koutou katoa.